Hello, God's good people. How are y'all doing today? I pray that y'all are doing well and blessed in the name of the Lord, because you know you're highly favored by God. So today I want to continue on what God started and last time, and that was pride. And so the angle we came from before was about, we always can easily spot what's going on with someone else, but what about the log in our own eye? So we were looking from a different perspective on pride. Pun intended, perspective, get it? So this time we're talking about pride, and we're looking at it from how the enemy can influence and have influence on us. And we not even realize it. We can see it enact in others. We've talked about it to see it in ourselves. But then, this right here, like I said, is to see how the enemy kind of slips in there. So remember that, and I have my notes on it so I can stay focused. But remember that Satan fell as lightning. Why? Because he said he'll be God. He wanted to be God, be like God. And he knows one of the quickest ways to get you to fall is through pride, just like him. He knew what it took to get him to fall, and he knows how to use the same tactic to get you to fall successfully. God had warned us several times not to forget that it's God that's given us the power to get well. And the reason why he does that and says that, to not forget him, is because it keeps you from pride. When you're reminded, God did this, it keeps us from pride. Every time there's a victory, a success, I go right back to, I ask God to keep my mind focused on what he has done. Lord, help me to see it the way you see it. So it becomes easier to always reflect back on the accounts of what God did to bring about the success. And instead of thinking, that I've done things with God's help, I'm transitioning my thinking repeatedly by focusing on what God has done and saying, it's God who has done things through my obedience, right? Because I obey God, he gets the glory. He did it. I didn't obey myself, but through my obedience in God, not in self, not in my own understanding, then God gets the glory. God has done the work. He gave me directions. He gets the credit for it, right? So it makes me think also, excuse me, of a story, something that actually happened in my life. As many of you know, I went through a health challenge. And we all go through some type of challenge, right? No matter what it is. But this particular person, when I was going through my health challenge, had come out of a health challenge and started, almost like a Meals on Wheels, I'll kind of call it, but had started a very healthy juicing and healthy plates that she was selling. And I heard good things about it. She was known in our circle. And so I thought I'd give it a try. And she said she wanted to help me. I wrote my notes so I wouldn't forget any details. She was trusted among some others that we knew were very reputable. And so I gave her a check for groceries, right? And I had waited days for the groceries, and she kept promising that she would have my meals. And my husband even offered to pick up the food. And the day the food was finally promised to be delivered, it was delayed nearly the whole day. I finally said, no, thank you. And she told me I couldn't get a refund and all that stuff. But let me back up into the part that I did not share because I just got right into, I gave her a check for groceries. No, it wasn't just like, oh, you gave her a check, that was the bad idea anyway. No, she offered to help me. She offered to come and get me from my home and take me out to just get out of the house. And I said, no, you don't have to do it, because she lived far away. And on the route to her home, when she was picking up groceries and things, because I had given her the check, And so she took me to the farmer's market with her. And so it was like a day, just, and I thought, oh, wow, this is pretty good while Derek's at work. And so she took me back to her house. When I walked into her home, my heart kind of emotionally sank. I was shocked because you're fixing food for people. I'm very particular about my food, especially with how the setup of your kitchen is. And it was so dirty and so messy. You know how some people are just very, can be a perfectionist and, you got to look this and that. And sometimes we can be that way, right? But this, no exaggeration, the garbage was overflowing. The garbage can was overflowing in the kitchen. Literally, there was no room in the garbage. There was no top on it, and it was nasty, and it was overflowing onto the floor. And it was, one of the garbage cans was pushed up against the refrigerator, which was it looked like wax dripping down the refrigerator. It was so dirty and nasty. And then at the kitchen table, there was food left from that morning sitting at the kitchen table, plates of food. And the countertops, excuse me, the countertops was overflowing with food that was to be used for preparing meals. The kale, all the ingredients were just laid all out across the counter. And I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And when I walked into the house, there was, have you seen the movie Hoarders? It's the best way to bring the visual to you. But in that dark living room, there was newspapers and stuff everywhere. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was so shocked. And I was like, oh my God. But because she took so long with the groceries and she lived far from me, by the time we got to her home, I was so faint and needed to eat something so bad. And I kept saying it even in route. Hey, let's stop and eat. No, it'll be okay. I got a juice made her stop at the gas station and went in and got me a juice mix, a healthy juice mix, so I could have something. And I was already frail and trying to come through this health challenge. And I needed to eat something. And so on the inside of me, I wanted to say, forget it, I'm not eating nothing. Then I had that thought of, if you eat any deadly thing, drink any deadly thing, it won't harm you. So I was like, I'm going to have to pray over this food and really put my faith on it because I need to eat something. And I gave away my money for the groceries. Otherwise, I could have said, let me just order something to be delivered. But that was my only option. I was like, oh my gosh, and my heart just sank. And I was sitting there because now I've got to wait until my husband gets off from work because he's my ride to come and get me since she drove me there, right? And I'm sitting there in her kitchen and she's got some serious dogs I can hear, thank goodness, in the backyard. But they were she's had the little poodle poo, who was off getting a shampoo, but there were some dogs you did not want to come in contact with. They were not house dogs at all. And there were, I don't know, maybe about 3 of them, I think she said she had back there, and you could hear them. They were big, ferocious dogs, it sounded like. And I'm like, oh my God, I pray they don't burst through the door trying to get in, smelling her food or whatever. So I'm sitting there in this situation. And at the time, her parents were in the home. And one of them was getting, had a health challenge too. And we'll leave it at that because I don't want to give so many details that some of y'all, if you know me, might know this person. And I don't want to do that. But to give those of you, a perspective of the situation. And we're dealing with this pride, right? I'm sitting there and she asked if I know about this particular book. And I said, yeah, we actually have that book. Oh, okay. And that was it. Nothing much. My husband calls. I could not wait. I wanted to cry when he called to check on me and tell him, please come get me. Please come and get me now. And I got that message across to him, and he made it as soon as he could, having to get off work. And he was shocked. He said, had he not seen it for himself, he would have thought I was exaggerating. It was awful. And he, having come traveling from where he was to get there, was also famished because we were waiting on our meals. And so he blessed it and ate it too. And the food was good, but so she has my check, and she's still supposed to prepare me, several meals for the week so I could have it. And I'm a person of my word, and I wanted to say, you know what, just forget it. Just forget it. But I didn't. I let her go ahead. Derek takes me back home. We're in shock, but we're people of our word. And we let her go ahead, and she promised, now I can pick up where I was. She promised that she'd get those meals to me. And it never happened. And so it kept getting delayed in the day and delayed. And I live a distance away, so that food is sitting in the car just traveling to get to me, to the other side of town. And after the delay, and it got close to the time for Derek to come home from work, so that's a whole 8 hours, and I've been waiting since the morning, been promised it would come, and it's a whole 8 hours. Finally, I couldn't anymore, and I had already called and checked on the status of my check to see if it had cleared or anything. It hadn't even been cashed yet. And I just told them to just, do the stop payment on the check. And I picked up the phone to call her and say, hey, you know what? Just no, thank you. I finally said no, thank you. And you know what she told me? You can't get a refund because it was already gone to accounting. She was a one-person operation, trying to make herself bigger than what she was, and said it was already gone to accounting, which I knew it hadn't because, like I told you, I had already called to see if the check had cleared. If it would have been cashed. And since it had not, then I did the stop payment on it. But this person was a one-person show. But because of pride, they were trying to make themselves bigger than they were. And some people call it fake it until you make it. This person had a common book. And what I learned afterwards, that book that she showed me and asked if I was familiar with it, and I said yes. I later learned that she spread the word to the person who wrote that book, that we both know, that she was taking me through their healing program, through her own healing program, and was using that book to help me. And then she had told me which doctor had helped her, and she also told them, and I'm connecting her with the doctors and all that stuff. And then she had told me that she healed herself. And I said, pride. She had healed herself. And so all of that is pride. And what does God say about pride? Pride proceeds a fall. So for this sister, of course, I prayed for her, but she shared things that, and I knew she was referencing me, that she had gotten all this food and, it was such a waste because the person did her wrong and didn't pay her for it and all that. And we know the behind the scenes, but pride will also have you lying. Pride is very deceptive, is deceiving. Pride is not a good look. Pride keeps you separated from God because it's sin. So this is the thing that the enemy is trying to do when you're trying to stroke your ego or to try and stroke your self to look better than life. Then we're setting ourselves up for a fall, and we just don't want to do that. Okay, so let's avoid pride at all costs. We don't want to make ourselves appear larger than we were. Hey, look, I messed up, I missed it, whatever, God help me, whatever, but just avoid pride like a leprosy. Okay, so that is what I have to say about that. And it is my prayer that we all remember that it's God that's given us the power to get well, that it's God who helps us. As long as we obey his orders and what he gave us to do, that's what's important, okay? And I may have Sam to come back on because I think he has something from his perspective too about pride and his encounter even at the age of 8. All right, so I'll see y'all in a little bit. Bye.
Well, hello, God's good people.
How are y'all doing today? Welcome back. So we have Mr. Simeon with us today,
Thanks.
which is wonderful. So Mr. Simeon, we were talking about pride and you said you wanted to jump in and add your experience. So what do you got for us?
Yeah, so I had a particular, app, and it teaches you Spanish.
Uh-huh.
And, it just teaches you Spanish.
And so how are you doing? How were you doing with
that? I won like so many awards.
Yeah. You were doing good.
So many awards.
And they even had different places.
Yeah.
You told me.
I really just don't like the one where it was like a sleepwalker.
But you said you placed first place.
Yes.
And how did that affect you, seeing that you were first place and all
First,
that?
I was like, I'm first in everything. And I just quit playing that particular app because I was the first in everything.
And then what happened as a result of you not practicing with that app with your Spanish?
I lost my Spanish. but I still know a little bit of it, okay? I still know a little bit of it. But,
You would have been further along, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Had you not, you were telling me.
Yeah, but that's what the Bible says. Pride leads to destruction. And then after that, it was like a duo misses you.
Yeah.
And then I came back, and then they had a note and said everybody slips up sometimes. And then it had one of the characters' pants split, and then he had his white underwear on. I'm like,
what did they say? TMI? Too much information?
Yeah.
Okay. But the point, and it was a little animal or whatever, but the point is you stopped your progress because you got inside your head about being first place, like some people do. And then they don't stick with God. They get an accomplishment, achieve something, and they forget that it's God that's given them the power to get well. And so now where are you with your thoughts about your Spanish? What are you going to do now? Or what have you done?
I might be like this. Mommy, can you look up my phone? I'm going to do Duolingo.
All right. Anything else before we wrap up and say goodbye to the people, encourage them in anything?
Yeah. Don't get in pride, because pride leads to destruction. Bye.
Amen. Bye.